Isagi Yoichi is probably obviously one of the best players Blue Lock has actively made or created, but obviously he still has some of his own downfalls and downbringings in his entire character and his own growth. This is a what if scenario on what if Chris Prince, the number 2 striker in the entire world, trained Isagi a lot before he even ever began into Blue Lock. I'll explain the caveats and exactly how I'll make this entirety of the scenario work in the story that you guys are about to hear, but I hope that y'all do enjoy this video. Check out the other content that I will be posting onto the channel, so leave a like and subscribe so you can actively see and catch up with content as I post it. This is one of the first of many videos that I will be posting on this channel, so make sure you stick around to actively enjoy it all. I will be doing Blue Lock what ifs, Awashi what ifs, and many other sports anime related what ifs that will be posted onto this channel, so stick around so you can get caught up with it. But let's get into the video. So we start the scenario off around the middle of Isagi's middle school days. He's still playing soccer and he's still pretty decently good at it. For the most part, everything has gone the exact same besides a few key different details. The main different details is exactly where we started off. In one of Isagi's games, Chris Pine just happened to be in Japan at the moment to do some kind of broadcasting event where he was just basically like as a very much of a rookie. Like, I don't know exactly how long he's been playing, but I'm just gonna say it's like kind of still some of his beginning years. I don't know exactly how old he is, if I'm gonna be honest, but he's just in Japan doing some kind of like networking thing going on for kind of doing some news outlets and everything else like that. So they just had him over there and he's just walking around. He would be walking around, he just passed by a game and see like Isagi's team going against another random team. He would look around, just kind of staying in the background, kind of trying to stay hidden from the crowd since he doesn't want to draw too much attention, and basically just watch the game unfold. He would watch as Isagi's doing it pretty decently well. He could tell that Isagi is a very talented striker and a very talented football player entirely, but he is still missing a few things that could really set him over the top, really set him to a new extremes, new levels that completely and utterly would devastate the entirety of any opponent that he would go against. He looks and watches the entire game and really is just having fun going and watching through it. And by the end of the game, he makes sure not to really be seen by anyone because, as I said, he doesn't want to make a scene. He doesn't want to make the crowd come and completely notice him and just kind of direct all of their attention towards him. It would just be more of a headache and hassle towards his part because this is a game for the kids. And he just happened to be passing by right there and then. He keeps in touch and kind of sticks around close enough where he can see everything that's going on, but waits until most of the people have left. By the end, once it's only basically Isagi and his parents left on the field because they needed to do a few things and they kind of just had to stay for the field for a little while, he finally makes his appearance. He comes in and speaks to this young kid. He comes over here and just says like, hello. As Isagi looks up and he's just looking at this guy and he looks closely and he notices this is Chris Prince, the number 2 striker, one of the strongest strikers and one of the best rookies. And like Isagi is just extremely ecstatic. I mean, he's jumping up and down. He's just really like, wait, what's going on? And his parents are excited too, and they're like, exactly like, what's going on here? But Chris just explains that he was just in the neighborhood passing by after doing some work, and he was just wondering if like exactly what's going on with Isagi. He just like kind of checks in on Isagi. Obviously this is a what if scenario, so probably none of this would actually happen, but this is just like to make everything work into the actual perfect line of the story. But So he actually takes an interest into Isagi and sees that Isagi has some great potential. So he actively asked if Isagi would actually want to train under him, train with him, and train alongside him to do some of the things that he does. Isagi automatically says yes, and he doesn't even hesitate. He says yes within seconds. He immediately says yes. His parents don't mind it either, and they spend the next little while basically just with Isagi trying to learn and catch up to Noah. Actually basically trying to catch up to Noah. That's still his favorite person. That's still his favorite football player, but he's now getting this training by Chris Prince. And so he's learning and kind of using Chris's philosophy. And Isagi is basically doing the things that he wants to the most. Chris asks, what does Isagi want the most out of his football? What does he want out of his football style? And Isagi says it quite simply, quite honestly, basically just going, what I want the most out of my entirety of this entire process, what I want the most out of my football, what I want is to be able to become the best striker in the world, is to be able to find paths to the goal strictly by myself and have the strength, speed, and agility, have all of the strength necessary to do it. Chris hears Isagi's entire motivation for everything that he wants to do, and he hears that Isagi, all he wants to do is really just have the abilities to do everything himself. Basically, he wants to be able to have the actual capabilities and physical strength to be able to change the course of the game with his own abilities, with his own powers, and he just wants to be able to basically do everything that himself. And he hears this and he's just like, okay, I can work with this. As they spend the next few years just quite honestly working up and basically building up an arsenal of Isagi just trying to learn how to do a lot of moves. This is basically spending years just developing Isagi's strength. His actual physical body, and developing his speed to a way higher extent. Developing his strength, his speed, his agility, his dribbling. He is developing this by Chris knows that he can't do everything that Isagi wants by himself, so he has a few of his other friends teach Isagi. And by the time we would get to where Isagi is basically playing in the first episode, he is a completely different player. He's already ambidextrous at this point because Chris thought that might be a good idea to get Isagi to be able to do that already this early. Chris's basic hope and goal is to make Isagi the best player that he can be, and Isagi could possibly be something like the best player in the world if Isagi put his mind to it. And Chris honestly believes this. Ever since he first met Isagi, he could tell Isagi had something inside of him that was really driving him to become a complete and total egomaniac. And so that's basically what that happens. So the game goes on, the game that started everything, the game against Kira. This game is going almost completely different. Isagi has a completely different level of speed. His speed is almost that of rivaling Chigiri. Isagi's been doing this for years. Well, I'm going to say that it was around his first year of middle school where he met Chris. And this is now, I don't know, maybe his second year of high school, something like that. And they basically are him just having some fun, him doing what he needs to do, but he is still something of quite of a very good, decent player. And his strength and everything else like that is already something completely heightened. So it's basically him going in and having all as much fun as he can and still using all these abilities that Chris has taught him. For the most part, not many people know that he's trained with Chris because he prefers to keep that under wraps, and Chris said that too, because if people knew that he was training with Chris, they would kind of think a lot different of him, and it would kind of cause it to be less of a competition Most people would, if they heard that he was trained by one of the best strikers, would kind of give up immediately. So he would prefer them going all out against him without having to hold anything back at all. So the game's going on, and Isagi is basically dominating. There's not really able to get the ball away from him. When we get to the point where he's about to score, close to the end of the match, this time it's not even a score of 1-0 with Isagi's team losing. It's a score of 4-1 with Isagi's teams basically securing the victory, because Isagi is just that much of a different beast now. He already has some actual news attention because he is such a good player, and basically just rose over the years, kind of basically out of nowhere, just became a better and better player, because during the summers is when they would train the hardest. They would get Isagi's body to completely new heights and completely new limits, completely breaking any barriers that he had before. Isagi still has that same mentality, and it's just nothing changed. So the game really ends with Isagi scoring that final kick, scoring that kick into the goal. Instead of passing it to anybody else, he shoots it himself. He wanted to play his version of soccer where he can see the field, where he can see everything going on and be able to tell people's movements. He didn't know it was going to be metavision, but he doesn't have it. He doesn't have metavision yet, but he's basically going to get there way quicker than he did in canon. And so basically he makes that shot, completely takes over everything, and is just basically having some fun winning and basically doing whatever he needs to do. After the game, he, instead of Kira, is basically doing the news outlet thing where they're just talking about how do you feel about winning after this and everything else like that. And Isagi's just gotten used to the news at this point, and he's just gotten used to almost everything at this point, so he's not really bothered or fazed by it. And why would he be? He's gotten so used to it. But the next day they would make it out, and they would get to the Japan Football Association, and he would meet up with Kira right at the front gate. Most of that is the same thing that he did and the same thing that happened in canon, because nothing really needs to change there, as once they would walk in, they would see the entirety of everyone else just basically already there waiting for them. Isagi told Chris that he was going to be entering the Blue Lock project, and Chris told Isagi to have some fun doing it. He had heard some inklings about this project and knew that this might be the best place for Isagi to be, the best place for him to thrive and actively grow as a player, grow as a football star, and actually gain his fullest and true potential. So Isagi goes in, Ego gives his speech and talks about Japan's sucky football, and Isagi actually agrees with him for the most part on this, because he's trained with Chris. He's been able to actively take a more nuanced approach to looking at Japan's football, seeing that it's not really the best and it needs to change. And so he's basically just going having the same kind of emotions that as he actual Ego has around Japan and everything else like that. And he asks, after Ego gives his entire speech, he's still the first one to completely run in and go try to join Blue Lock. Ego expected this because Ego knows exactly what Isagi's been up to. It's, for someone of his caliber, it's not really something that was kept really secret, because Isagi had trained with Chris and a few other high-ranking individuals, because Chris needed a few people to help him out with dealing with Isagi's actual innate talent and everything else like that. As they would enter, get on the bus, and make their way to the actual Blue Lock building, everyone would be put in basically into the same groups and grouping, because no matter what anybody says, I don't really quite like messing with the actual teams of everything else like that, because they would kind of change a little too much for me to be bothered with. So you're just gonna leave it exactly how it is and just kind of leave it exactly the way that they left it. So we basically have it where it's the exact same team, it's exact same people on the tag, but the main difference is Isagi is 275 instead of 300. He is at the top of his entire group and his entire section, with Kira being right under him. So for the most part, Igaragi still is the person with the ball, and he still does the exact same thing, and basically all of that really goes the same way, but the main difference is when Kunigami is about to kick the ball right back to him, Higaragi, and Higaragi tries to actively grab onto Isagi, it doesn't work at all. Isagi has been training his body for years, for around close to 4 years now, and his body is way more stronger and way more solidly built than anything else. So when Higaragi tries to do anything, Isagi's able to basically just grab him and just yeet him onto the ground, basically just pushing him right back up to a completely different level where it's basically just him coughing up everything, and Kunigami's able to actively sock him right back after trying to do any of that. Bachira sees what Isagi just did, and kind of they still become that close friends in the same way, because they kind of still have the exact same personality with the same thing. So Bachira is not able to see everything that Isagi can do right then and there, but he can still tell there's something about this guy. Isagi must have some kind of monster within inside of him to be able to do the things that he's going to be able to do later on. For the most part, Isagi doesn't really grab the ball anymore after that, because he's able to really avoid the ball. And until very much of the end, where Isagi just grabs the ball the same way that Bachira did, just because he wants to have a little fun, and he's kind of just getting a little bored with this way that they're doing it. Him and Bachira still have that same 1-2 action, the same way that they did, where they still take out Kira, because I don't really see a point of having him here. I don't see a point of having Higaragi here, but he's already there, and so I'm just kind of gonna leave him there either way. But it's just kind of be he's doing what he needs to do, and he's just kind of wanting to have some fun. So he grabs the ball from Higaragi, completely confusing everybody. Kicks the ball one way, Bachira grabs it and goes the other way, completely does the same 1-2 action where they get Kira out, and it's 2 seconds on the thing, and Kira's not able to do anything. Once Ego gets back onto the thing, he still talks about how you still had seconds on the play. You could have done all of these things and you didn't choose to do anything. That was your choice. You could have done so much more. And Kira's just completely pissed off, and she just leaves. As everyone gets on with their day after a while, and they have to do the actual body training and the workouts for the next 2 days before the actual first election starts. For the most part, Isagi's dominating in almost all of these events and all of the workouts, because he's been basically doing this for the last 4 years. Chris didn't take any precautions or countermeasures to making sure Isagi was basically on the healthy side. He made sure obviously Isagi was healthy and stayed alive, but he made sure to work his body to the breaking point. Isagi has a higher jump than mostly everybody there. His speed is that of Shiguri's once he's actually letting loose, and his strength is just basically something completely monstrous, if we're being completely honest. He is a very, very solid player. He just isn't completely developed yet. He hasn't developed every single thing, and once he does, that's when he will be able to actively do a lot more, do so much more. As after all of that, that's when the first election would start, with Team Z going against Team Y the same way that they chose to originally. For the most part, Bachira and Isagi have already been chilling and hanging out, chilling during the after practicing, and just basically doing some extra practicing and having some fun. And Isagi basically just showing off his dribbling skills. Isagi's not as good as dribbling as Bachira is, but he still has some pretty nice skills when it comes to anything related to dribbling. He's basically a quite very good all-rounder when it comes to any parts of the actual physical, actual whatever it's called. But he is still some kind of a monstrous player, being honest. It would be Team Z versus Team Y. So they would basically, both teams would enter the field, enter the stadium, enter the actual field, getting ready for everything and getting ready to do everything that they needed to do. Boro's team would be there, and Isagi's team would also be ready. They would all get into their formations, the exact same formations that they really started off with, because they don't really know anything about each other yet, so they basically still haven't come up with an exact strategy. They're still starting off at a 0. But the main difference is now, Isagi doesn't choose to pass automatically to Bachira. He knows, he could at least understand how this is probably going to work, because he understands soccer extremely well. He understands that if everyone's basically going to act like a striker, there's going to be some actual and utter chaos among this field. So he knows better keep the ball to himself for a little bit and then pass it to Bachira when he feels safe. So he just tries moving forward and patches it to Bachira when he knows there aren't any other people around. Bachira actually gets that pass, and they just basically dominate the entire field and just passing back and forth, dribbling almost completely through everyone. Eventually, Isagi would be met right in front of Boro. Boro would basically be trying to get past, trying to get Isagi and get the ball from him, but Isagi's not letting that happen. Isagi basically just completely heel kicks to the front of him, basically just tricking Boro completely, and then does like 3 nutmegs past like 3 people right behind Boro that we're making sure that if he didn't grab the actual ball, they would be able to get it. Boro's extremely pissed off, but he can't really do anything anyways, so Isagi gets the first score. That entire scenario where all of the people are lining up together doesn't really happen because Isagi is basically faster than most of the other people there anyways, so it's not to the point that they could really even bother trying to do anything even remotely related to trying to grab the ball from him. He has too much ball awareness and ball sensitivity to be able to let anyone take the ball from him without him noticing. So he's just basically having some fun, and for the most part, it's basically Isagi scoring almost every single and utter goal throughout that entire game. The other team's able to score a few goals because Boro still is extremely powerful with his shots, but anytime that he has to go directly against Isagi, he doesn't even get even a shot in. So it takes them a little while to do anything, but he can tell Isagi's actually a good player, but he's extremely pissed still because he thinks he's the king and Isagi's out here doing him like he's not even a person in this field. And everyone's just like extremely wondering, like, how's Isagi so good? Because he hasn't really said anything to anyone about the fact that he's trained with Chris Prince. He doesn't really need to see the reasoning behind saying that. Ego knows, but that's just because obviously he would know. But besides that, he doesn't see the reason of telling anyone his business because it's not their business. It's not anything that they need to worry about. So the game ends with a score of basically 8 to 3, Boro getting 3 shots because Isagi blocked 5, and Isagi getting around 6 shots, Bachira getting 1, and Kunigami still managing to get 1 because he was just perfectly lined up, and Isagi could see a perfect goal going from him specifically. Isagi basically already has a very limited version of Metavision at the moment because he's never been able to actively go this all out in actual matches because he's basically just been training and doing the matches. He spent most of his time in England for the majority of the last few years, but he had just returned back to Japan for a little while, going to the high school and everything else like that. And so he was just kind of being like, okay, it kind of made any sense. It kind of just made sense for him to kind of return back at that point in time anyways, so he just felt like that was the perfect time. But yeah, so Isagi's team completely and utterly dominates that first round, and it's basically just him having some fun afterwards. They celebrate the fact that they were able to get so many points, and Isagi is completely happy. He gets the good food, so he's not any of this like getting the very decently bad food this time. He's actually able to grab some good food, and he is able to grab quite a bit of it because he scored so many shots. But yeah, also I just realized I had been saying to think Team Y this entire time. It was Team X is the first team that they went against, and Team Y is the second. Team Y is Nico's team, and I'm not even gonna really go into too much detail about that match because Isagi basically completely and utterly dominates that one too. Nico's weapon doesn't really do too much against Isagi specifically because Isagi has so many variable weapons that it's not really a main factor. his off the ball movement and everything else that he was basically lacking off in the beginning of the show originally, he's already basically mastered. He's had so much time to learn and master these, and everyone else is figuring out their weapons and everything else like that. But for the most part, they already have Isagi as their number one, their main person, the person that they're basically leaving all of the fate of everything into. As the thing would go on, and it would just basically be anyway, they're not even doing the same strategy where they have like people everyone switching around. This time it's just basically Isagi taking lead and like the main centership, and then everyone else just kind of following in their lead. It goes completely hilarious, to be honest, because Isagi's just completely dominating. If he can find a goal, he takes it. By the end of the game, the score is basically 10-1 by the other team managing to just score 1 point by complete accident. Honestly, it is completely hilarious because they're completely just like, what just happened? And the fact that they were able to grab 10 points anyways was something that no one was even expecting to be able to possible, because Isagi was able to score over another like 8 points this time alone, and then Bachira and then Kunigami basically able to get the other 2 this time again. So it's basically just those 3 being able to grab points. Everyone else is just basically there, not really doing too much. Everyone's completely glad because they're winning. They're winning extremely well. So there's not really much point to complain, but they're not really getting a lot of time to show out or do anything because Isagi's taking so much of the glory. And everyone already knows that they're not losing, because there's no way that they could lose now. But either way, the fact, even if they were ever to possibly lose, Isagi's making it, and no one can make over 18 shots in over 2 games. That's not really something that would be able to happen even at all. So they're just like, okay, what do we do here? I don't know, nothing. And for the next match against the Twins, it really goes quite a bit different this time, because the guy, I can't remember his name, but the guy that tried to betray Isagi and all of Team Z, he doesn't choose to do it this time because he knows that there's no way that they're going to lose. So he doesn't see the real point of betraying his entire team to try becoming the person to make all the shots and make all of these goals, because he knows that there will be no possible way for both teams to be able to make 18 points, score 18 shots in this 19-minute game very easily, especially if Isagi's still on the field. So they just kind of leave it alone, don't really bother it too much, and just basically see what they can do. So this time there's no any of that BS where, oh, they already know every one of the moves, so they already know everyone's weapons, so it's kind of more of an even grounding off the beginning. Chigiri still is able to actively awaken himself because he's noticed that he hasn't been able to do too much, and Isagi still kind of gave him that talk because he could tell Chigiri was basically the only one not even trying, because Isagi was passing the ball to everyone that he could. He was making sure if he could find a way to use them, he was making sure to involve everyone that he could into the field. But Chigiri was the only person that he could tell wasn't giving everything that he had. So Chigiri still manages to awaken, and that actually gives Isagi a lot more variables and a lot more options to actually work from. Him being able to actively use his entire abilities and use his strength kind of gives Isagi a lot to work with, because Isagi isn't as fast as Chigiri, but he's not much slower. If Isagi and him were to go into a race, complete foot race, Isagi would basically be maybe 1 second to maybe 1.5 seconds behind Chigiri at most. And if we're being at least, he's basically 0.5 seconds behind Chigiri if we're talking about a 100-meter dash. So it's not really, he's still extremely fast, and this is still very beginning of the show, very beginning, so he still has a lot of room to grow and a lot of room to develop. But Chigiri is able to develop, and Isagi is able to let Chigiri get a few shots in, because not many people can actually get past Chigiri and him if they're both actively working together because of their speed. And they're basically just completely and utterly dominating. Isagi's passing Bachira, Chigiri, Kunigami. Those 4 are basically taking the entirety of the field, and no one's really able to do anything. By the end of that game, Isagi scored another 6 points. Chigiri is able to score another 3. Kunigami is able to score another 2. Bachira is able to score another 3. They basically completely and utterly dominate that game. It doesn't even go anywhere close. What is that? another 6-3. It's like they're able to get like another 15 points, 15, 16 goals completely and utterly through that game. It's completely and utterly crazy because they were doing this almost very quickly. As soon as the other team was able to grab the ball, even with the Twins, Isagi was able to steal the ball away from them extremely fast because he had a lot of training in doing that. A lot of training in being able to steal the ball back once the other opponent has them, because he knew that would be something that would be quite handy to be able to do. So he knew he needs to be able to at least practice doing it even once. So he did that a lot with Chris, and he's very good at it now. So by the end of that game, Team W almost completely and utterly, not even really a main factor really. They were able to score, like some of the Twins were able to score some shots, and one of the Twins was able to score some shots, so they're still going to be able to stay in. One of them is still going to be the same people that stay in. Like after the teams, everything go like that. The same people that stay in, that's not going to change. But the main difference when we come to the last game, Team Z versus Team V. Team V has been able to see the scores from Team Z, and they're a little hesitant really. They've been wondering what's going on with this team. Is like this team just completely and utterly monsters. Being able to score double-digit points every single game is something that's almost completely unheard of. Like basically double digits. The first game they were able to score 8, but after that it was just completely double digits, and everyone's just been like, what's going on? Like Ego's even been a little surprised and shocked by Isagi's actual abilities, because like he's just like, this kid is amazing. This kid has amazing skill, but that's obviously because he was already trained by one of the best. He already had some prior experience training to a very high and prestige level. Differently, Team V has still been doing as good as they did in Canyon, like in the same way that they did, but now they're a little more concerned about Team Z. They've seen the scores that they've been racking up, and they've heard about their monster player Isagi Yoichi. The player that's basically been making a majority of all of their shots and has already accumulated a shot ratio of over 30 shots compared to everybody else on his team and everybody else on the entire court. He has basically been dominating this entirety of the first selection, and everyone's just completely astonished about this guy. As we would get to the point where the match would start, both teams walking in, and the other team just basically trying to figure out exactly, like just looking out at Isagi and just basically checking him out. They've seen images and video playing of him while they were doing the other, watching some of the other matches and everything else like that. But for the most part, they really just they don't see everything that they saw, because he looks a little shorter. He doesn't look as big. He doesn't look as menacing. Obviously, he's still around the same height, maybe a little taller at most, but he's a lot more muscular. His body is basically perfectly built and chiseled. But either way, there's not much that they can do there. The match would start, and it would be Team Z having the ball first. The team already has a basic, complete understanding about just let Isagi do whatever he feels like, and they should be able to win. But obviously they still have their egoism about them, and they're all still trying to get some points. Isagi's basically been dominating this entire time anyway, so they know that he's even if they ever did end up losing, he would have been the one to stay, but he's basically been carrying them this entire time. So the funniest part is just basically them really trying to figure out exactly what to do, exactly how they're going to do it, and exactly where they're going to go from there. Isagi's just basically having fun passing to Bachira and moving back and just basically going back and forth the way that they need it to go. Eventually, obviously they still have a very good amount of players on their team, on the other team, and Nagi, Reo, and the other guy with glasses, I can never remember what his name is, but they're all still basically doing the most damage to kind of block Isagi from actually scoring. Obviously, Nagi, being himself, is basically still extremely good and still as good as he always is, but in the beginning of the match, he really wasn't going all out yet. So Isagi manages to get a good 4 points in the beginning, before they actually get to do anything. Even when the other team had the ball, Nagi was able to get a few shots in, so he was able to get at least 2-3 points. just strictly because they weren't really expecting Nagi's playstyle. Nagi's one of those people that you can't really tell exactly what's going on, but as the game goes on and both teams are gaining more points, because this is kind of more of an even footing, especially just due to the fact that Nagi's on the other team, they basically are just having a little more fun playing around. Reo eventually starts getting that little worried expression that he has on his face when he thinks that they could possibly lose, causing Nagi to actually finally awaken and really start going all out the same way that he did. As soon as this happens, Isagi finally is able to really let loose, because now he has someone that actually is close to the same footing as him. Nagi might have just started, but he's still some kind of that great talent that's able to basically kind of get on even footing in a sense with him. And so Isagi and Nagi just basically have their own all-out battle, just basically those two doing whatever they felt like. They're basically just completely going on, just battling each other, though basically acting like they're the only two on the field. They're doing most of the damage and most of the work themselves, just basically trying to deal with whatever they need to deal with and basically just having fun. Everyone else on the field can really basically not keep up with them at all, because while they're doing what they're doing, not really too many people can catch up with them. Obviously they can catch up with them by speed, but when it comes to skill, when it comes to actually just controlling the ball and actually even telling what they're doing with the ball, nothing's really catching on. These guys are just basically battling, having an all-out battle right in the middle of the field, and everyone's just basically there to witness. Everyone's just basically there to watch, and as time goes along, each of them are getting scores in and getting scores, but for the most part, it's just basically those two completely and utterly dominating the field. Nagi's having a shit ton of fun, basically going all out against Isagi. Those two are basically just completely having a big giant ball, doing whatever they feel like, doing whatever they please, and just basically taking control of the field. By the end of the game, the score is actually fairly close, because Isagi wasn't completely focused on points more than actually just playing around and having the amount of fun that he was having with Nagi. So by the end of the game, Team Z still wins, and the score is closer to around like 10-7, because Nagi wasn't completely able to keep up with Isagi the entire way through, but he was still able to do quite a bit of damage, and the score was actually way closer. Isagi didn't make every single shot since Nagi was completely focused on him, so he would end up just passing it around and passing it a few times to Kunigami and Shigiri to basically deal with the rest and get a few to Batra. So the final score was Isagi with around like 5 points just strictly to himself, Kunigami with 2, Shigiri with 1, and Batra with the last 2, I think. Yeah, the last 2. So they basically were just completely having complete and whole amount of fun throughout that entire game, and it was a very, very exciting game to witness. After that, they basically go back to doing that final training before they enter the second selection. And I mean, they're basically having a whole lot of fun, just like, obviously Isagi's having the most fun, but it's obviously still extremely gruesome and basically tiresome, honestly. So it's basically all the same people that made it in are the same people that made it in. That doesn't really change, because I don't see the reason of changing it. But as after that training, after like that week-long training would be done, they would all meet up into the middle of the Blue Lock actual building and see all of the rest of the teams, see everyone else that was there. And Ego would give his speech and tell them just grab a ball and enter the second selection. As they would do that, Isagi would see Rin go in first, and Isagi would go in second. And basically, they would just completely do the same thing against the Blue Lock man. Isagi would be, this time, he would be around like the first person done. And Rin would be completely and utterly shocked by this, because he would see that Isagi could already be there before anybody else. And Rin would just be like, okay, let's just team up together, since obviously that's probably going to be the best idea for them, since those two are the first ones done. As more people start coming in, and Rin's just like, okay, let's get the third person, let's get him to be our teammate. And Isagi says, nah, let's hold off. I've got someone in mind for our third person that would probably be the best person for our team. As he's like that, he completely starts talking and just basically goes on. And the person that he was waiting for was Nagi. After that entirely very intense match that he had, he was like, okay, yeah, that's easily the person that I want to team up with. They could tell that their teamwork would already be something quite insane. And since Rin was able to become the second person done, he could already tell that they should be able to do some actual good damage. And Isagi still has actually pretty decent dribbling, and he has actually pretty good dribbling and passing skills. So he knows that he doesn't absolutely need Bachira. He would have wanted Bachira, but he knows that Rin probably is going to be one of the best choices for him, and he can just grab Bachira later, because he can at least explain the rules to him and everything else like that. So he understands that he could just grab Bachira later. So he just goes, they wait for Nagi, and then they end up going in. And they basically just completely they get there and they wait for the other people. They wait for everybody else and everything else. They wait for everybody else to kind of come up with their teams and everything else like that. And Bachira comes in, and a few other people come in, and eventually everyone else creates their teams. So the first team that Isagi would go against would be Bachira's team, just because he wants Bachira on his team almost immediately. So Bachira would have teamed up with Kunigami and Shigiri, just because that probably would have been the best choice for them. And so that's exactly how that would go almost immediately. They would enter in and they would be going for their 3v3. And the match wouldn't even be very close, honestly. Isagi and Nagi are basically either way going to be dominating, but Rin being along there with them is basically just going to have a lot of fun. He's really going to have a whole lot of fun just basically doing whatever he needs to do. They start creating their chemical reactions and the same things, and basically just doing all of this extra real energy putting into it. And the game isn't really very much close, because with those three on one team, then the way that they are now, the other team is only able the Bachira's team is only able to get 1 point, and that's just basically because of the fact of how they were able to line everything up. But besides that, they were only able to get that one singular point. Isagi's team, Rin was able to get 2 points, Isagi's team was able to get 2, and Nagi was able to get 1, and they basically just finished the game right there and then. Rin didn't really care who they grabbed, so they just grabbed Bachira because he knew that he would be the perfect person to put on to their team for that exact moment, because Bachira is easily able to actually coordinate with all three of them and actually would be able to deal with it. And Bachira is extremely pleased because now he has the chance to actively play with these two monsters and the people that have monsters and everything else like that. So he's actually very, very ecstatic about this opportunity, something that he's really, really looking forward to, because it's just something that could honestly be a very great deal for him. The matches would go along, and eventually them being the first people to actually have a 4-man team, they would have to wait for somebody else to make it all the way up there, and it would take a little while, but eventually another team would make it there. This team being Boro's team. They would be Boro, Chigiri, Kunigami, and Rayo. Those four would be on the same team, and they would actually go in. At this point, they both basically, no. It would be Boro, Chigiri, Shido, and Rayo. The basic Kunigami still ended up having to go into the wild card because of the fact that Rayo and Kunigami, it would be Rayo and Kunigami basically were on the same team at a point, but along with Chigiri, but then Chigiri and Kunigami ended up losing. Well, Chigiri and Kunigami ended up losing, Kunigami having to go and Chigiri staying on. So it basically caused Kunigami to still be going into the still having to go into the wild card process and everything else like that. But now all of these three are basically just having some fun and going against each other. Shido is basically the biggest problem against everyone there, but compared with Isagi, Rin, and Nagi on the same team, he isn't going to be doing too much of a big giant factor on their equations. As the game goes along, they can all tell that Shido is an amazing player, and they can tell that he is a very, very strong player. Like, that isn't even something that they have to be concerned about. Shido is actually able to score a good few against them. He's able to score 3 strictly by himself, and Boro was able to score another one. But the fact that they were able to get 4 is something, honestly, that they weren't expecting. But either way, the score was tied. It was tied 4-4, and obviously Isagi wasn't letting any going to lose, so he basically just actively let loose a little bit, because he usually never going completely full out. Most of the time he's kind of just holding something back in, but now he basically lets everything out, and he basically just really takes complete control of the field using the actual kind of metavision that he already has, and basically just starts taking complete control of whatever he's doing, whatever he needs to do, having his fun, having whatever he needs to do, and just basically running with it, doing whatever he feels like, and just running with whatever he needs to do. As the game would end right then and there with Isagi scoring the last shot, being 5-4. This would cause basically everyone on their team to completely agree on who they were taking. They all agreed that they were taking Shido. He was the best person for their team, and he was obviously the strongest person to be introduced onto their team. So they were just like, yeah, there's no choice here. We're taking Shido. We start this off in the stadium, in the field, with Team Blue against the World 5. We have Julian, Loki, and everyone else that was on the World 5, the same teams, but the main difference is the people on the team for Isagi's team. Obviously, for the World 5, we have the same people: Julian, Loki, Leonardo Luna, Adam Blake, Pablo, and Daba. We have the same people there, obviously, but the main difference is the changes on Isagi's team. We have Isagi, Rin, Shido, Bachira, and Chigiri. They are basically the ones on this team now, which is going to make a completely different approach to the way that this game is actually going to go, mainly due to the fact of how busted those 4 alone will be together. Obviously, Rin and Shido can't really work together well, but either way, they're basically going to be forced to work together anyway, so they can't really stop it anyway, so there's not really much that they can do. They'll basically have to work together anyway, so it doesn't really matter what they do and how they do it. But we would get to them just like before they even get the match started, to them and the World 5 just talking. Isagi actually understands what they're saying because he spent so much time overseas that he actually understands what they're saying. So before Rin can even get anything started this time, Isagi's the one to go, so this is just like a payday to you? As they're just like, yeah, really, that's basically all it is. As he's just like, okay, just give it a minute, you'll see. As the World 5 takes a closer look and actually can recognize Isagi. Chris Prince has taken Isagi on a few different places, so he's met a good few of the higher ranking players in Blue Lock. So most of them actually have met Isagi at least once or twice. They didn't speak to him often, but they've at least seen him before. So they at least know that this kid is actually going to be probably a tougher opponent to deal with. So they would eventually start, and it would be Team Blue having the ball first. As it would basically go, and they would basically just get started. And it would still be where Isagi and Bachira basically started off, and Isagi passes to Bachira almost immediately, and he basically just starts completely running through, as everyone can see that Isagi has some pretty decent speed to him. Obviously not as fast as Julie and Loki, because not even a chance Isagi's getting that fast, even with Chris Prince's help, but he is basically at least showing some speed, as Bachiro would pass it to Isagi exactly when he needs to, and Isagi would just start passing it around to Shido and Rin, and they would basically all having to work together to get past them, because this time they're actually a little more on guard. They know that Isagi has been trained with someone previously, and they know that this is actually going to be a harder match if they don't automatically take care of what they need to take care of. So Julian Loki's basically right there guarding Isagi specifically, and he's leaving everyone else to each one of the other people on the World 5. Isagi specifically is probably the biggest threat on the field, so they're basically completely just trying to do what they need to do, so the first point doesn't even come immediately. Eventually, Team Blue is able to get that first point just by being able to work around a lot of things and basically doing whatever they need to do. But I did also notice that I said something wrong earlier, and I'm just going to kind of retcon myself right now. I said Shiguri instead of Nagi was on the team, because Nagi is on the team. So just forget exactly what I was talking about earlier. Just kind of don't even think about that, honestly. But the game would go on. Obviously, as soon as the World 5 is able to get the ball, Julian just basically speed rushes everyone, and Isagi is actually able to keep up a little more than everybody else, but he still obviously can't keep up with the speed and rate that Julian is able to go to. So he could see like Julian's not even going his full speed, and Isagi's going all out in this one. Like, he's going completely all out, and the team that they have is already something completely amazing. So Julian manages to get that first point on their team, and it's basically the score is now 1-1. As Isagi's team is able to get the ball again, it kind of just starts going a little more differently than the way that it actually went in the actual canon story. With this completely busted ass team, it really doesn't go to where they only managed to get 1 point. This time they're actually able to manage to even get closer to 3 points on their team, around closer to 4 points, honestly, with Shido basically going completely all out. As soon as Isagi gives him the ball, he just lets Shido do whatever he needs to do. Shido completely just starts bypassing everyone, and he could tell Isagi has a very big ego, but he also knows when and where to play. So he's basically just really respecting Isagi for a little, for the actual sake of the words, but they're basically just playing and playing and playing, and Shido's able to get one singular point with the help of having to pass between Bachiro and Nagi and everyone else like that. So each of them are basically going to be able to get a point throughout the entire game, besides at least one of them. They're obviously still going to lose, but the only reason that they lose is because Isagi might be an amazing player, but he's still not at that skill level where he's able to really take on the World 5. Even with this completely amazing team that he has, he's still at least not at the World 5 level. He is extremely close, but he's just not at least right where they are. Isagi was able to do a lot of the work, so they could at least all tell that Isagi was basically the one kind of orchestrating most of the moves and orchestrating most of the plays on the field. And they're going to relay this back to Ego and about telling him how that Isagi basically was the most prominent player on the field, even though he didn't have to score. He was the one directing most of the plays, making sure kind of everything was going to where it needed to be. The reason why Blue Lock's team was able to get 4. As Ego gets this, and Isagi and the team, after finishing the game, are obviously annoyed that they lost, but they actually did fairly well against the World 5. They go back into their room and basically just talk and contemplate about what happened. They are honestly annoyed that the World 5 just kind of brushed them off even after they basically almost won, because it was just basically a paycheck for them, and they were able to score 5 points, so it didn't really matter to them. They still got their money, and they still got everything that they came to get for it. So it doesn't really change or affect them in any singular way, in any way of the word. It's just basically just another day for them. But for Isagi and his team, they're just completely and utterly pissed off. They're really just singularly annoyed about everything that just happened. They would eventually go to sleep and then wake up the next day, and Ego would just tell them to all meet back up in that same place, and each team would start coming in. the first team, Isagi's team, would be the first people to come in. Then the other teams would start coming in. Reo, Chigiri, and Kunigami would still be the one person that's left out. Besides that, it's literally basically all the exact same people. The main difference now is with Ego is basically giving out the rankings of the actual Blue Lock 11. This time, Isagi is at number 1, Rin's at number 2, and like everything basically kind of devolves one in order, but it's basically everyone's almost in the exact same order. But the main difference is obviously Shido's still going to be the one to get picked. Like Sai has heard about it, like Isagi, but he doesn't really know too much about him, to be completely honest. It's not really like he knows quite a bit about him, so he kind of leaves Isagi as a kind of figure on the board. That's really going to be a very big mistake, because even though Isagi's not World 5 level, he's at least equal or barely superior, maybe even more than barely superior to Sai. So it's not where he's going to be like just completely outmatched, outgunned, and basically completely outclassed in every single way. This time, no, he's going to be basically on even footing and everything else like that. Shido is kind of honestly a little sad because he actually liked playing with Isagi. He can tell Isagi was very practical and obviously egotistical about the way that he played. He basically made sure to control everyone. Shido obviously found that annoying, but he still honestly liked the way that Isagi played. And for the most part, like, even when we go back and backtrack to where Ego was in the kind of meeting with all of those like chairmen and everything about the Football Association, this time he had more of a ground to stand on due to the fact that one of his team was able to actually basically almost win against the World 5. Even though they didn't win, they still got very close, but the actual like chairman were still not having it. They were just basically still saying like, you guys weren't able to win, so we're gonna have to cancel it. Hence the reason why the U20 match is still actually going to be happening. That's the only reason that it's still happening, because he thought like that's gonna be the quickest way to actually get them to shut up and just kind of accept what's going on. He found that, and he's kind of just gonna leave it like that. But so it's just after Ego announced that Shido will be playing for the U20 team. Everyone was a little confused about this, but they didn't really mind it too much. Ego has given out the actual rankings of everything that will be happening, and basically given out the entirety of the rankings for the entirety of the Blue Lock 11. Isagi this time was put in as number 1, so he will be put in as the striker. But the difference is Ego isn't going to use the same formation this time around. He's not going to use the 4-5, like the 1-5-4 method, the same way that he used. This time he's going to use 2 strikers. He's going to use Rin and Isagi as strikers, just to kind of make it a little more fun, make it a little more interesting. That's basically what he's going to be doing this time around. So just completely be aware of that. And that's kind of going to be more fun for me to actively do this and make the entire story work anyways. So quite honestly and basically, we eventually get to the point where they all are at the actual field and all the stadium getting ready for the game. Shido has been brought in by Toshisai, and they're already talking about what they're going to be doing. They choose to do the same thing with leaving Shido on the bench until they're needed, because Shido isn't really that kind of a team player or anything else like that, due to the fact of, come on, like, we know who he is, we know how he works. It's not really a big stretch to know that it's not going to really change, even though he's played with Isagi up until this point, and Isagi can change that much of him within just like seconds of playing. So we eventually get to the point where it's everyone on the entirety of everyone that's going to be playing on the stage. The same people that were subs are still subs, and not really much as that has changed, but the teamwork between a majority of the group is quite a lot of bit better because of the way that Isagi worked with a good majority of them and actually played with them a little longer. Him and Rin have already kind of built a kinship with knowing how each other plays, and they already know how to work with each other, so it's not really much of a real hassle for them to play with each other as both strikers, as they would be the ones with the ball first. The game starts kind of the same way, with Bachira still being the one to make that first actual drive, getting past one of the U20 players quite easily that was trying to use scissors and everything like that, and Bachira is basically easily able to get past them. That's not really a problem for him, strictly due to the fact that the way that he's been training with Isagi for the entire time that he's been at Blue Lock has still been able to really up his level. He played with Isagi a majority of the game this time around, so he didn't get the real chance to develop that freeform, less monster style, but playing with Isagi still made him develop that style even more, because Isagi wasn't going to want Bachira to only rely on him. He doesn't like that, so he made sure that Bachira was more able to actually play by himself in case they ever need to be on opposite teams. Isagi would want to actually have to go and be a challenge against Bachira. As after Bachira gets past one of those U20 players, he usually tries to pass it to Isagi the same way that he does in Canon during the U20. And instead of this time Aiko being actually able to intercept that pass, Isagi's already basically able to notice that Aiko was already trying to get there and intercept him. So he's able to actually move himself into the positioning where Aiko can't actually even do anything, and he's able to still grab that ball. Isagi takes the ball before Aiko could even do anything, and Aiko is obviously a little confused about this. He's surprised because his defense is obviously something that is honestly amazing in any kind of way of the word. Your defense is just something that's almost completely spectacular, so the fact that Isagi was able to pull one over on him is honestly something that he can't believe. But they keep the match going, and they're basically just kind of more confused about who the specific player is, because not many people have actually heard of Isagi. Isagi made sure to keep his name kind of hidden even while he was training with Chris Prince. The mainly people that know that are the people that Isagi met while he was training under Chris Prince. So besides that, not many people actually know who Isagi is, so it's just kind of more of a fun factor for him. After he gets past Aiko, it really kind of just goes downhill for the U20 team from there, if we're being completely honest, due to the fact of him just passing it automatically to Rin, so they could basically do a 1-2 combination, and they both basically just completely create their chemical reaction right then and there, and basically just start working with each other. Rin knows that Isagi is probably one of the best ways to be able to beat Sai, and they both at least know that working together is the quickest way to win this very easily. So they already gotten their basic priorities straight and know that they want to win this, and they need to win this. So they have no chance or anything else but to make sure that they're actively doing what they needed to do. They need to make sure that they're playing around. They need to make sure that they're doing everything that they need to actively make sure that they win. There's nothing else that they can't do besides win. As with both of them working in unison, it makes it a lot harder for the U20 team to actually be able to actually do anything against them. As they're both completely going out, we have Aikyo and Sai basically both gunning for those two that are basically leading the entire charge. Sai is going after his brother, obviously, and Aikyo is basically doing the same thing that they did to Nagi, using basically the 4-man play to kind of just block him from doing anything. But even then, Rin knows to expect the unexpected from Isagi, so the minute that he even feels a little bit outmatched by Sai, which obviously normally in like the actual in canon he wouldn't have even bothered passing, he would have just done everything that he could to pass him himself. But this time Sai has a few other people around him, so kind of is making it like he has 2 other people around him, and Isagi has 4 people blocking him. And normally they would think that they can't even do anything, but the funny thing is, like Rin still chooses to pass it to Isagi. Everyone's completely and utterly shocked by this, but Isagi is just basically laughing the minute that he sees Rin still chose to pass to him. Isagi just basically breaks out of the entirety of the U20 and basically just uses brute strength to break out without managing to even catch one single foul. and basically catches actually gets a first touch on the ball that Rin sent, which was honestly just a little bit in front of the entirety of that 4-man block, and Isagi was able to easily grab it and easily make a shot exactly from the position that he was in. Rin managed to pass it to the perfect position for Isagi to be able to make it in and take that shot perfectly. Isagi was honestly just like, you really thought that I was gonna be able to catch that? Like, you really were that sure that I was going to be able to catch that? You are something else. As they just basically give each other a high five and basically head on in their way. Then the U20 team would basically get the ball next. At this point, Shido's just basically laughing in the background. He's just basically laughing on the benches, knowing that this would happen if they didn't put him in automatically. He even warned them that they're not going to be able to do too much if he's not at least there to take the brunt of the attack and basically watch two of those players. He didn't even give the names, but he knew, like Sai knew that one of them had to be Rin, but he didn't completely understand who the other one is. But now they understand, and now he understands that the reasoning why they needed him was these two right here. So before they can even make their first move, they automatically choose to put and switch Shido in. They know that they can't do anything if these two are going to be on the field, basically playing around and menacing with the entirety of the team. It's basically something that they know is quite literally impossible for them to be even bothered to do anything. It's going to be physically impossible for them to do anything. As the first person to get the ball on the U20 team is Sai, and he's basically going to be completely going around with Shido, just basically trying to do whatever they need to do. Sai is able to get past the majority of the Blue Lock defenses due to the fact of who he is, and as soon as he gets to Isagi, they basically are honestly at quite an even footing. They're basically just canceling each other out until Rin is able to get there, Nagi is able to get there, and they basically triple team Sai. As soon as Sai sees this, he basically immediately patches it over to Shido. Shido was like right behind him, so he does a back heel kick just straight to Shido to be able to get him to them. But the funny thing is, they forgot that there was at least one other player that is still going to be a problem. And Bachira might not be on Shido's level, but he is still something that is going to be quite problematic if we're being completely honest. He's going to be something that's just going to be something that they would never have expected to do or see anything at all. But Shido's basically completely playing, doing what he needs to do, as Bachira's just right there trying to do anything to stop him. At this point, Nagi went in to help Bachira just in case that he does need any kind of help. But if we're being completely honest, both of them are going to be able to at least hold off Shido for a little bit. At that point, Rin is able to actually join there too, because he at least knows that Isagi should be able to hold off from Sai for at least a little while. So now Shido is at least something that they could all deal with together without having to really worry about anything. So they get to Shido. They are able to actually take the ball from him, and those three basically start off to their descent over to the goal again. They're able to get close to it, but IQ is able to get at least another 4-man team on most of those guys to at least hold them off in their tracks before doing anything. This causes them to get the ball back again and basically be able to pass it back to Shido, who had already ran all the way over to the goal, at least into his perfect shooting zone, and they pass it there to him immediately, causing the U20 team to be able to get a shot in of their own. As soon as Isagi's team is able to get the ball back, they basically immediately just completely know what's up and knows that this isn't going to be an easy match. So they know, all right, let's get into this. Let's go. So they basically just go, okay, let's go. As they all immediately just completely go all out and start rushing in. There's not one single defender, because Isagi kind of literally gave them a plan, as he knew that they're not going to be expecting this. So they basically completely all go out of formation, and Isagi basically just start passing the ball randomly to a random player, basically just completely going all out. And as soon as this happens, they can't really tell who the ball is going to be going to. And Ego didn't even come up with this plan himself. Isagi came up with this. And he basically just said, okay, pass it to whoever you see is the most open. They just basically are just doing that, and they're able to use that formation to basically be able to get Isagi over to the goal again, and he's able to shoot the ball. He's able to shoot another one and make another shot and basically easily make it in. As this goes on for basically a majority of the game, ending out to where each person is basically, like, each team is basically able to make a singular shot most of the time, but it's kind of more complicated depending on how it goes. But either way, it's basically where Isagi, or like it's either Isagi, Rin, or Nagi are able to make a shot off, and then they get on the other team, then the other team is able to get Shido to get one shot off. Like, it's just basically going like that back and forth for the entire game, and it's an extremely close game as you get into it. The game is just extremely neck and neck for the entirety of the game, and it's leaving the entirety of the crowd in awe. They didn't expect just a couple of high schoolers in this Blue Lock program would be able to actively go head for head with the entirety of the U20 team. Like, at this point, by the end of the game, the score is around 5-6 within Blue Lock's favor, and it could really easily end up a draw if the U20 team can't honestly get a shot in at the last moment. If they can't get off two shots in the next few minutes, so they could easily end it as a draw. But they're coming in to win, because a draw wouldn't be considered a win even then. But so they're basically completely going in, trying to give everything that they've got, and knowing that this is their last chance to basically even make any kind of hint of a difference in this match. So they're trying in. They give the ball to Sai and they basically just let him go out. And before anybody says anything, there was somebody in my comments that were just saying, stop saying the word basically. I need to say it, and even if you get completely annoyed at it, don't care. Leave it alone. It's how I speak. Leave it alone. But without that out of the way, we get to the point where Sai and Shido are basically going in, going out, and trying to do whatever they needed to do. They grab the ball. They basically are just completely and utterly just hauling ass to the other side of the field. Shido is completely and utterly just running to his fullest content, trying to do any single thing that he can. Isagi's been able to block him almost this entire game, and he's honestly found that quite annoying, but he knows that Isagi's an amazing player, so he can't really get too annoyed at this. But as the match as the end of the match really goes on and things really start to happen, the actual turning point of the match really happens. This happens as Shido tries to make this last shot, not even noticing Isagi in any kind of his path. He is wondering about this, but as soon as he shoots, he notices that Isagi was just right there waiting for the shot to happen. He basically baited Shido into taking the shot, taking the actual shot and trying to make a shot in, but Isagi was already there waiting for wherever Shido was going to try getting that ball to go in. Isagi just literally chucks that ball to the other side of the field, with Rin already waiting there for him. Wanting Rin to get that last shot because he knows the history between him and his brother. Rin is able to get to that last shot before even the U20 team could actually get there, because they didn't even notice Isagi. As I said, he still has amazing off the ball movement, and he can still get into people's blind spot if he needs to. So he's basically just literally got the ball straight to Rin, and Rin chucks it in with all of his strength, basically getting to the point where the Blue Lock has won the U20 match. It is there. It is done. And the crowd, everyone is completely shocked. Even the U20 team was shocked on how good this team was. Isagi especially. No one was expecting Isagi, so they didn't understand that. But he still does the same thing where he grabs the mic at the end of that match, and he says he'll be the one leading the Japan national team, the U20 team, to victory during the World Cup. He's the actual nationals, everything. He's basically saying that I'm the person that is going to lead Blue Lock. And everyone still categorizes him as the basic hero of Blue Lock. He finishes his statement off by saying, and oh yeah, if you guys were wondering why I'm so good, let me give you a hint. I trained with Chris Prince prior to coming. I've trained with Chris Prince a majority of the last few years, so everyone in the crowd is just completely more stirred up and shocked about his statement. No one knew this and no one understood this better than Ego, honestly, but now, especially the U20 team understands why this kid was so good. They understand why he was able to do so much damage to them. But now, they're basically like, okay, that's why. As Sai is just like, this kid would have been amazing if I had got the chance to work with him. Maybe one day. As Isagi is just like, all right, we can go now. As he puts the mic down and just basically walks away. As this is where I'm going to be leaving the part off. If you guys did enjoy this entire story, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I hope that y'all have enjoyed the series up until now, and I will inform y'all before I actually get back to the series. But at least for now, this is goodbye. Peace.